I'm going to be totally burnt out.
There we go.
But we're having fun. Here comes Guido. Guido!
How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I just posted on Twitter. Hashtag decision fiction.
Awesome. I'm going to retweet it. Man, thank you so much for coming here. Guido, you're an amazing musician. Can you tell us, like, how early did you start?
Well, I started playing violin at an orchestra, youth orchestra, about, I think I was 12 years old. I'm 28 right now, so it was like about 16. Yeah, it was about 16 years behind. And I started composing when I was 18 years old. I was amazed about, creating stuff. I did some video game modding when I was 16, all about, creating stuff. It amazed me, so I started doing that with music.
Very cool. So, like, what's it like playing? Okay, so I don't play violin. I play the piano.
Okay.
What is it like playing the violin? Like from a musician standpoint, I can kind of describe playing the piano, but I'm assuming you probably play the piano as well since you compose.
Of course. Yeah. I think the good thing about playing an orchestral instrument is, in rehearsals when you go practice and you go and attend, all these concerts and play with friends and go to the rehearsals, you learn so much about, orchestral language, the orchestral languages, how you can conduct, how can you speak, and how you can write for, several instruments like woodwinds, brass, strings. So in all these years, I learned so much being an orchestral musician. And it reflects a lot on my writing, and my music because of that. I think I have a very strong influence on classical academic music, but also I'm trying to push boundaries and learn a lot of new things. Like you compose rap, for example. For me, it's kind of a how do you say this, like a completely new way journey to go and discover, new things. I'm right now, experimenting with synth elements, etc., etc. It's just like, a doctor career. You can't stop learning.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love about composing music too. It's like I sometimes I just get in the studio and I just go, I don't know about for you, but like the music kind of speaks to me. Like it's hard to start, but once I kind of got it, I hear the next element to add in. I kind of go, okay, it's missing this. I think this would sound kind of cool. And with the new technologies, like what equipment do you use? What's your software of choice?
I'm right now using Ableton, but I'm doing a transition right now using Cubase. But I'm in the process,
It's funny. When I first started, I use Propellerhead Record.
Reason, right?
Reason. And
oh man, I loved it.
I love Reason, but it's funny. Somebody told me the best sound quality you're going to get is out of Cubase. Many years ago, they say Cubase is the best sound quality you're going to get out of all of the other platforms, even though everyone uses Pro Tools. But I'm not a super fan of it. So like, interesting that you Cubase.
Yeah, I think I had a chat recently with one film composer, and he did like a really great comment about not only in music softwares, but where are they? Which companies heading where? In softwares. So, for example, in music, we have a lot of kind of different DAW companies. That, for example, we have Ableton, Cubase, Studio One, Reason, to name a few. Yep. But what you really need to go and think about when you want to purchase your first software, or where do you want to head, is what's the aim of the of the company? Is it for EDM composers? Is it for rap producers, or is it for film composers? In the case of Cubase, that's the thing. They are going for interactive media composers. So that's why a lot of composers like me are going towards what's the future and the updates that they do for the software. That's really important.
That's a really good insight that I would have never thought about. Reason is kind of going in a direction of EDM. Like they have, I mean, it's like press one note and the whole thing just goes. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You don't have to think. There's no composition. It's super easy and it's really good. It's really easy to produce EDM. But like it has been difficult for me to produce like major orchestral compositions. It's just not as easy in Reason. So you're absolutely right. Great insight. Question, I wanted to know, what got you started? Was it your parents? Was it like, did you go in any special program before you went into the orchestra?
Yeah, I think the main thing was like I attended like various orchestra concerts, but I never attended like a youth, orchestra concert with children and stuff. And I was like, 12, 13 years old, and I got amazed about like how like different kind of kids or in that case partners. I had some friends playing in this orchestra that it was back in Argentina. And of course, it was those times that you are in high school and kids started to have their band and stuff. And the thing that got me into violin, it was just like the curiosity of having like a rock Celtic band or some kind of that. But life got me into classical music. Thanks. I think it was my teacher. I had a really good Russian teacher that taught me not only violin but also pushed me into.
So tell us more about your path to where you are now. So you start at 12. You're playing in the youth orchestra, and then what happens next in your life? How do you trans?
Yeah, so what happened was like I made a life choice decision on getting a scholarship to study abroad, and it got me to a very good school in Texas, in Dallas. It's called SMU Medical School of the Arts. I studied there for 4 years, and since my freshman year, I started collaborating with the film department, but most importantly, the video game department. They had a very good video game school there called the SMU Guildhall. If you don't know what's this school, I'm going to write it. smuguildhall.com. They do a lot of masters program. I think they're ranked right now #1 in masters in game design by Princeton Review, I guess. smuguildhall.com. I think that's it. And I started doing student games. Like about for those 4 years of my career, I did like 16 game soundtracks on this journey, and it got me a huge portfolio to get into my master's at Berklee College of Music. I did a master's in scoring for film, TV, and video games. And from there, I started, my freelance career as a film and game composer.
Wow. All right, guys, if you're in the chat, any questions, throw them up. We'll be asking questions to him as we continue. You have a fantastic composer right here. Guido, how do I pronounce your name for someone who does not speak Spanish very well? Guido Arcella. Did I say right?
Yeah, so the thing it's pretty funny. My name is it comes from Italy. It's Guido, yeah, but in Latin America they pronounce it Guido, But the same, that's the correct address. It's kind of the same. Guido is just the same. Arcella or Arcella is the Italian version. I have 2 versions of my name. It's pretty funny. So
okay, I'll say Guido because it's easier for me to remember.
Okay, cool.
So when you write for a game, do you write? That was actually my question. Like, what's your process? Like, how do you write? Do you play the game based on what they say the game is about? Like, how do you do that? Yeah,
I think many of my creative process depends on when the studio hires me. I think the first thing is in many situations they bring the composer in pre-production. That means that we don't have any footage at all or any at least we have some art involved that they send me. Most of the time they send me like pics or you know, kind of the art that they will get, you know, the colors, if there's any, you know, a guide or executive, you know, folder to be inspired of. That helps me a lot. You know, composers are very sensitive about, you know, colors, not only colors in nature but also colors in timbre in instruments. You know, if it's there in the game, any culture involved. You know, for example, we are now producing with my team a music production for a Mayan game. You know, that's involved, you know, some Mayan art. So we're trying to get, you know, some Mayan instruments or Hispanic instruments to get involved in the soundtrack. Regarding, you know, my creative process of I see there a question if I write with pen or pencil or so I right now what I'm doing is I'm really involved in the piano, you know, in my MIDI sequencer, and I write directly in the DAW. So I start, you know, sketching ideas, and from there I start, you know, like getting you know, some feelings about, you know, what's right, what's wrong. Sometimes it takes me 2 minutes, 5 minutes to get it right. Sometimes it takes me 2 weeks or over a month to get the like, for example, a main theme of a movie or a game, you know.
How do you know when it's right? Does it just feel right when you're done?
When it feels right when it's done, but also it's very important that the producer or the director it says it's right. You know, that's the main thing. And
yeah, that's a good that's a good point. So somebody had in here another question like, oh, okay, we mentioned that one already. No thrash metal for a Pokemon game. Nope. Only death metal and Pokemon. Thrash would be out of place. You guys are funny. Rob, do you program most of your instruments, or are there some at all that you record live? Good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, for example, we're living now in a high tech era, you know. So we have these things called sound libraries. You know, so they're pre-recorded sampling instruments that they are sold by, you know, packages or any kind of, you know, teams or something like that, and you get, you know, for example, string libraries, woodwind libraries. So I have something called a template. A template is, you know, like a kind of a orchestral list, or, you know, a pre-rendered system that I have, you know, like over 200 of channels on my DAW, and from there I just hit record and get the virtual instrument. But regarding, you know, what's the best process or the best quality for music, you know, I think it's something in the middle. So we have one side being, you know, like fully live instruments that is like, it sounds great, you know, but requires a lot of, it's a high budget thing to do. And in the other extreme, it's just like, you know, fully, you know, sampling robotic like instruments that can make a soundtrack. So I like to go in the middle, you know. So how can we create a very good soundtrack with, you know, with the budget that we have, getting some of the virtual instruments to make kind of a ground cushion of, you know, of the soundtrack. And from there, over the top, we can have, you know, some instrumental solos that are live, you know. So we kind of combine those two worlds, you know. That's one of the best tips we have in the film and game music world, you know.
I have a question. You said you mentioned you have a team. How many people do you have on your team?
Well, we have 4. I have I'm like the main composer guy or the supervisor, and I have 3 students that I'm aiming them and kind of also learning from them, but also teaching mostly my mistakes that I did over the years, so they they don't go through with that, you know, again, you know. So,
you know, it's awesome when you can have a mentee you can learn from your mentee and teach them at the same time. That's a beautiful thing. And it doesn't always work that way. So that's a great thing. Here's another really good question. Do you think music should be planned from the very beginning of the project? Or is there no big problem with starting the planning and composing it at a later point? That's a great question.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. Thank you, Angel. And it's a friend of mine. I think that direction has to come from the game developer's vision about, is it like a game that inspires you get inspired by music, or what's the role of the music of the game? I think it's completely wrong to think the game without music at all and the audio, and just like in the last week of development you're like, okay, what are we going to do with the audio? Let's hire some folk and and make it done. So I think it's very important to have it ahead, and make. I'm telling some producer friends that it's important to make game audio as equal as as your art, or as your level design, etc., etc.
I was just going to mention that. That's one thing I learned at Scopely. There was a game we were testing. And, I was talking to one of my partners there, and he's like, oh, the music doesn't matter. I told him, and this guy's making 3 times me at this company. And I'm like, dude, you're totally wrong. And he's like, what? And I'm like, it means so much. And it's important. A good example of this is Candy Crush. So Candy Crush made a ton of money, just a ton of money. But the first version, the voice was a female voice. And she would just say delicious in this French Julia Child type of voice, and it just did not work. And they changed the voice to a more manly, delicious voice, and changed the music, and the game just took off. And it shows how important it is. And music in your game is so very important. Is this something that you found in your games that? The games just don't. Have you ever had anyone come afterwards and be like, hey, please add music. We think it need music, and you can see the difference afterwards? Or is it always you are a big part of it because the person knows that music is so important? Is that something you find?
Yeah, I think something, key is communication, there were some situations, like you said, the developers come at the last minute and they're just requesting music. And because of the times, or I don't know, just you send them the delivery and they don't even know. I don't even know if it's right or wrong. It's I'm very sometimes you need feedback, proper feedback. It's okay, that's good, go in that direction, or that's completely wrong. I will give you some music reference. That's another topic. It's called temp music that some guys some producers use, to aim the composer for certain kind of music. But I think it's very, very it's key to make the music or think the music in early stages back then.
Interesting comment here. It all depends on what the feeling is that you're trying to put out there. So take Nightmare on Elm Street with the beginning scene where the little girls are singing 1, 2, buckle my shoe. With that scene, strings are done very well to an excellent effect. However, replace those strings with the goofy soundtrack from the 80s slapstick and the scene loses all gravity and appeal to it. Very true. So your music can usually accent a scene very well, which is why it's so important when you're composing your music, how you deal with that. And that's the question. As a follow-up, are there any instrument libraries, VSTs, contact instruments you particularly like to recommend?
Yeah, I just replied there. I think if you're just starting out, Complete 10. It's a bundle that it's from Native Instruments, the company that does Contact. Contact is the hosting, a very important hosting software for VST instruments. And Complete 10 is just a starting bundle, a very good starting bundle to start, awesome. Composing on your DAW.
Guys, keep the questions coming as we continue. Let me just quickly pause for station identification. You're at the first annual Interactive Fiction Writers Conference, and we're here with Guido, award-winning composer. Hey, can you tell us about some of the awards you've won?
Yeah, sure. So it's funny. I'll tell you why. So the first award that I got, I think awards are very first of all very incentive and very inspiring to keep up with your career. Game music and film music is, I think, they're one of the most difficult jobs to keep up and get into it. And but well, I think my first award that I consider an award, it's back in 2016 we won first place on the Intel Game Awards. That was like a university game showcase by Intel. And they showcase, I think, about 8 to 10 different universities that they do, game development education. And one of them was SMU Guildhall. They were the one that I collaborated for all these years. And that got me and the team the first place of best student game. From there, I think it was a good exposure to meet other people and other developers to continue my journey. And well, recently, 2017, I was kind of in another way, kind of inactive on competitions and all these awards. But this year, I started to go back and starting competing, if you will say, on film scoring programs. There's a lot of film scoring competitions. I can't see game music competitions for now. I detected some of them back in, I think, 2-3 years, but they're no longer active. That's a shame. But so I won this year first place at the Indie Gathering film scoring competition. It's a very important festival for indie film and filmmakers, held in Ohio, and third place on the California Independent Festival in San Francisco. Doing scoring a trailer or a short film, so you pay like an entry fee. They send you like a short film or a trailer, and every composer has to score the same footage as you, and that's very, very important. So you go to YouTube and you go.
That's great.
You type Indie Gathering 2018. You will have plenty of versions of music of that same scene.
Yeah, that's an interesting
it's very
competition.
beautiful to
That's
see
something
the
I didn't even know
insight
existed. It doesn't seem easy
all composers,
at all. A little
and
daunting
how they
even,
think
possibly.
music.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Tejas has a cool question. Can you talk about music in games and Pavlov's dog effect? Where I think the Pavlov's dog effect, it has some other names as well. Like basically it helps the user want to do the same process over and over. How music has an effect on that. Obviously the bell does in Pavlov, bing, and you hear it and you, like even now, I mean, that works. That's how our cell phones work. When you hear the ping or you see the light, something has happened. So how do you write music, or do you write music to have that effect, to make the user want to completely do the action over and over again?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I never heard about that concept. That's very good to know. Thanks for explaining that to me. I think that the challenge, about scoring for games and the difference between film scoring and game scoring is how can you make music no repetitive? Like how can you engage the player and not make it kind of bored after 1 minute or 2 minutes trying to solve a puzzle or making through a room or whatever. So that's where not only music and it's on the table, but also how can you build a very good game audio pipeline with an interactive game engine or interactive game audio engine. Like for example, we have, I don't know if you guys know about various interactive game audio techniques, game music techniques like vertical layering, horizontal resequencing, or looping. That those are very important kind of tools to make music how do you say, more engaging and non-repetitive, and interactive. That's most important.
It's actually the opposite of the Pavlov's dog effect, because Pavlov's theory is having the same sound, like a bing, over and over, will make the user do a certain action repetitively. So like, once again, the ping that you hear from Facebook makes you know it's a Facebook message, and you open your messenger expecting to receive a treat, which is usually something that is a great piece of content. This is how and why content creation, like platforms basically are so addicting on purpose. They use this type of technique. But what you're mentioning is the exact opposite, because you don't want the user to get it and get bored. So you actually produce something that is just different enough to make the user want to keep doing it, but familiar enough to have them feel good when they play again. That's an interesting concept. Now, you mentioned like vertical, what?
Vertical layering.
How does that work? What is that? And then we'll answer this question, Angel. I won't miss you. What?
Yeah. So part of, you know, like game scoring, we have like you said, like we said, you know, the mission is just like we need the player to be engaged, right? So one of the techniques that it's used often, you know, in many of games, you know, console games, for example, it's a vertical layering system that it's, for example, we can have, you know, we have a puzzle, you know, and we need to make the player solve that puzzle in 4 steps, right? So he or she enters the room, and we have a layer 1, you know, kind of a drone playing along. A drone is just like something low consistent that you hear like a hum there in the low end. And then, for example, if the player starts interacting with part of the puzzle or starting to solve things, a second layer comes along, and you know you have a second instrument coming and playing over that drone, and so on. You know, so you have a layer 3 playing along with the second instrument that just came in, and making that player, how you say this, like feel that they're in a good way and that they're solving that puzzle, instead of making you know, like just like a looping music and that's it, you know.
Great insight, because like, you know, I think like old school video games like Street Fighter, right? Like it's a loop. You're gonna hear the same theme music for Ryu every time, and you're gonna love it. But listening to what you just described like really fits more for interactive fiction, because the user opens the app and they begin to play, and it's a very simple start, and then as they continue through the story, there's another layer added. That's genius, and I think it fits really well for interactive fiction versus this looping idea that would get pretty repetitive.
Another one that I think it works, and maybe some of you guys might feel useful, is just like, for example, a transition element. So we have, for example, an intro loop that is just like a stinger of like a musical motif that's like, okay, it's starting, you know, and you have like some bells or something announcing, you know, the start of the match or the start of a level or whatever, and you have a loop 1 coming, you know, and you have like this 1 minute loop just playing along, and you have a transition that has a condition, you know. For example, if we have a trading card game, for example, and you have a parameter that says, you know, okay, so if one of the players goes 50% or lower on their HP, play transition and go to transition and go to loop 2, you know. It's like a more intensive loop, and make the player, you know, aware that he's losing, or the other player that he's, you know, like he or she's winning. So it's an important thing to, you know, to mark, you know, the condition and the you know, and the player awareness, if they're losing, winning, or they're just like solving puzzles, or they're in the bad spot or in the good spot, etc. So there's like a lot of things to do with music, you know.
So that's an interesting statement. And when variable X is below Z, then play A. And when variable X is above Z, then play C or B, which makes perfect sense. Tejas, I think we should be able to code something like that on the back end for our platform. I don't know about for the networks, the social networks, but probably something we can code. There was a question here I wanted to get to. I can't fully, I gotta scroll down. I think I'm about to break it. Here we go. Guido, do you have some recommendation, Guido, do you have some recommendation for people with a low budget? Music is one of the most important parts for the experience, but it's also very expensive. And as someone who knows little about that world, I don't know if there are any options or some kind of service directed to low budget projects, to conditions the user to some sort of action after hearing a specific sound of music. So low budget, what can we do for someone who doesn't have the ability to hire you because they're not going to use decision fiction or whatever the case may be? What are the options? I know there's the answer somebody put in here, actually, Morgan put in, is it takes a bit of doing, but you can use freemusic.org. If you have this skill, you can mix and match little bits of different tracks to a great effect. However, there's also ambient background tracks too. Is that the best option? Just look for a free music archive?
I think I never went to Free Music Archive, but let me answer the first question. People with low budget. I think the first thing to engage, is just like knowing the people who are you're going to work with. That's very important. And I think if you get to know them and see similarities in each other's work, and if the other person is interested, there will be ways to compensate the work or through favors. For example, I think speaking about Kickstarter and monetization and all these things on social media, there's some services in game, not only in game music, game audio, but other services that they just how I say this, they'll do it, but you can pay a certain amount, but then on your Kickstarter, you will kind of how I say this, refund them, through Kickstarter or a fan page, via fan page or something like that. So essentially, there's a lot of things going on inverting your time. I mean, spending your time and putting all your coins on a project. So if for example a composer feels that the game is very good, but you're just all alone and you have a very good idea, I think a composer or any sound designer or any other game related person will go with your project.
Yeah.
But I think it's important, to refund them later on, And I think Kickstarter or any other platform that you guys, I think,
somebody asked,
are more
I think it's Morgan again. Guido, what is the
do,
most effective technique to keep users engaged while at the same time, like you were saying, not falling into the all familiar pitfalls of game scoring? What techniques have you, like, I know we talked about layering and different musical techniques, but are there any like actual musical styles? Like, have you found always use violins when you want to have this effect? Or are there some standard things that we could probably Google through that you could just tell us, like, these are easy ways to create this emotion?
Yeah, I think first depends on the video game, or the game that you're trying to tell. Second is identifying, again, variables or parameters that can be, how we say this, used on the music. For example, early on we talked about like a trading card game. A trading card game has, hit points, so you can use hit points as a condition to, make the music more variable and more interesting to the user. Boss fights are also very effective on music. For example, if your boss fight, has several stages or of transformation or thing, the music has to, also respond to that thing. Puzzles also, like for example, if your puzzle has, I don't know, like 5 to 10 variables of discovery or whatever, you want that to be included on the game audio pipeline, And I say game audio pipeline as as a list, like it's something that you have to be aware as a storyteller and a designer, to make your game as
So I
completely
think that's
as possible,
our next question. Like
not
everyone
only
in this
on the
room,
visual
we
but
make games.
also
Like
in
almost everyone here makes
the
games or
audio
writes stories.
side of things.
What do you need from us to produce something that is viable for a game? So you mentioned this audio pipeline. I guess, like, what does that look like? Is it basically, I'm looking for music like this at this point because the user is going here? Like, how does that work? What kind of document would we need to produce to, how does that work? I mean, it's new to me. I have no idea because I always produce my own music. So like, I have no idea what that would look like. And I'm interested to know what you would need from us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like I said earlier, I think anything that has to involve, the kind of visuals or something, if you're in a pre-production kind of thing, start, by showing, your art, your concepts. The story is very important too. What's your story? What are the characters? Where are they're going? Where are they coming from? And what's the result of all the storyline. That's very important. Also, speaking about music that producers are aware or they are based on the game. For example, there are many video games that for now they're kind of a remake, or they have very similarities of third-party games that they want to make the music kind of the same. So that's kind of easier to do, but you don't want to make it as the same as that. So it's like kind of a challenge. And some other people just or other studios just want them to to bring a completely fresh new proposal to them. That's kind of dangerous, but also it feels free for a composer to have that kind of a responsibility. But also, you have to know very well what's the project, what are the colors, what's the art, what's the storytelling for you, and how music can complement the game.
So we've talked a lot about game music, but we haven't heard anything. So will you share? I don't know if it's going to be able to hear from.
Yeah. So I have I kind of.
Oh, it's so cool. Very cool. So awesome.
That did it. Where is it taking me? This might prove challenging. Yes! One down, one more to go. That did it. The path is clear.
That's super awesome. It's funny, like all the video games I've played in my life, and I never noticed that. Super duper duper awesome. Yep, so you might just need to turn your mic back on. Oh, one more. Yes. I like the vertical layering too. Yeah, to me, that was just the best one. Transition state. It just makes so much more sense. Like, I just look at all my favorite video games like, oh! Wow. Yeah, amazing. You're amazing, dude. I mean, I already knew you were amazing. But yeah, really, really amazing. Incredible.
Okay, yeah. There we go.
So, like, I guess, like, any other questions in the chat? How do we get in touch with you if we need music? You know, just give us some more insight. Like, what's your website? Toss it in there.
Yeah, sure.
Any final advice you want to give to the writers on the platform?
Yeah, you can find me at Facebook, like my full name. I'll be happy to accept your friend request, Guido Arcela Diez. I'm on Instagram like Garcela Diez, as well as in Twitter. My page is www.guidoarceladiez.com. I just posted there. And I'm giving, for the Writers Conference, a 20% discount on my services. Yay! Not only, you know, music, but also I do also, you know, supervision on game audio pipelines. Like we said, you know, like helping identifying your, you know, your parameters or your variables on you know, on your game, and how can, you know, make the most on your game via music or sound design. You know, I think that's very important.
As I mentioned before, you know, it's our goal to figure out a way to work with Guido and also all the other speakers that you've heard today on how to create a great package for our exclusive writers. So we'll be in that discussion as we continue. So if there are no other questions, Guido, thank you. Thank you. Another great person I met through Instagram. I was just like, dude, you're awesome. Like, please come talk to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me, guys.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Next up, we have something super duper unique. We're going to meet our market. I'm so excited to talk to her. I'll explain why in a second. I'm going to finish my lunch. Is it still lunch? I don't know. But if that's it, thank you guys. Thank you, Guido. I'll be in touch. Guys, say thank you, and we're on our way out of here. Ah, so exciting. This is amazing. Okay.